Good evening. My name is Tina Hubbard, and I would like to thank Councilman Kumar, Isha, and Rohan for getting me involved in the Neighborhood Watch program. I also like to thank the city and the Sheriff's Department for a wonderful, informative presentation. And I want to also recognize my co-safety captain for getting us certified in a record time. We learned of the Neighborhood Watch program on September 25th, and I was appointed one of the safety captains on October the 3rd, and from October the 3rd until October 10th, we had all the information for our certification. We have our area is Meldrovich area, and we have 26 zones. And out of those 26 zones, we have 18 captains already on board. And I'm sure we will get the others in another record time. So thank you for bringing this to my attention, and thank you for all the work that you have done. And special thanks to Councilman Kumar for this effort.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity, and I'd like to thank Tina as well, because I'm one of the safety captains in our group, primarily here to express that, where there's a will, there's a way. And above all, we had a catalyst with Mr. Kumar, who actually helped us get this in a record time of 3 weeks. We not only had the program in place, but we also had Senator Jim Beal attend our event to kind of further endorse the neighborhood. So I think it's a good example, case study, which I think we should exemplify in the city of Saratoga, so that we make more certifications possible here. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up. Please start with your name.
Hello, I'm Isha Marothra.
And I'm Rohan Marothra, and we're both juniors at Lindbergh High, and we just wanted to talk a little about our experiences with the Neighborhood Safety Watch over the past few months.
You can talk right into the mic so we can hear a little bit better. That'd be great. Thank you.
So as was previously mentioned, we both helped start, along with the Councilman Rishi Kumar, to start the 30 Neighborhood Safety Watch programs that got certified at today's meeting, and we really want to thank the city for helping us and working with us to make this possible. So I want to talk a little bit about how we first both became involved in this effort. So we were just taking an evening stroll a few months ago, and we met Councilman Kumar on the street, and we basically discussed the recent uptick in crime that has been happening around Saratoga. And we decided to initiate a Neighborhood Safety Watch program in our neighborhood, which is the northern part of Pride's Crossing. So we basically initiated and launched this program at a Neighborhood Safety Watch meeting we had at our home, and we got really good participation, and we were able to identify leaders for our neighborhood and block captains. And just today, of course, we were able to get our neighborhood certified, and we identified 16 block captains of our 19 zones, and we hope to identify the remaining 3 block captains, so it's really exciting. And in addition to this, we also worked with Councilman Kumar to push forward the Neighborhood Safety Watch programs for the other 29 neighborhoods, and Isha can talk a little bit about our efforts to do this.
So around the same time that we met Councilmember Kumar, there were a lot of people who were jumping up after hearing about the other programs, the other neighborhood safety watches, and asking for help with initiating their own. And there were also a lot of different neighborhoods left on Councilmember Kumar's list of neighborhoods that he was hoping to get safety watches started in. And so we assisted him with that, and we attended several neighborhood safety meetings to start off the programs. And in order to get people to come to these meetings, we knocked on doors and handed out flyers for these neighborhoods and talked about the initiative and the uptake in crime. And in addition to that, we helped people identify block captains. And apart from that, it required a lot of communication, because we were working with a lot of people, definitely over 100 people. And so this required a lot of email communication. And so every other week, we would send out emails to all the neighborhood safety captains and figure out where they were in their process and see if we could help them push their neighborhood safety initiative. And in addition to that, we answered a lot of their questions. And just this past week, we've been helping them finish their safety templates. And we've really been enriched heavily by this experience because we've gotten to learn a lot about leadership and communication, and it's been really, really cool to just see how we can bring together a large group of people for one cause. And so we just want to thank the Sheriff Department, Councilmember Kumar, and the city for giving us the opportunity to take part in the initiative. And
Right.
so thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much.
I did want to recognize Isha and Rohan because without their phenomenal leadership, 30 programs would not have come together today. And they just stuck to it, pushing relentlessly, reminding me of things that were to be done, and working with like 30 different neighborhood groups to make it happen. And Larry is going to be talking about specifically the help that Isha and Rohan provided. I think our community is very lucky to have some super talented kids in our midst that lead such efforts. So thank you all for your service that you have done in the last few months. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Please proceed.
Mayor Capello, council members and staff. I'd just like to, my name's Larry Robin, and I represent the Wardell Saratoga neighborhood group. Our group is fairly large, 32 blocks or zones, over 255 homes in the area. Right now we have 4 coordinators and 19 block captains identified. We probably need another 1 or 2 coordinators and 13 more block captains. But with the help of Isha and Rohan and Councilman Kumar's assistance, we've managed to pull it all together in what I consider pretty good time, about 3.5 weeks since we got going. So thank you all and appreciate your help.
Great. Thank you very much, Larry. Appreciate it. I managed to find a couple of slips in the big stack that I have here. One is for Sue Mallory. Would you like to come up and say a few words, Sue? I apologize for missing these earlier.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sue Mallory of 12258 Kirkdale Drive here in the city. I'm going to read a letter I wrote late last week to the editor of the Saratoga News. I understand that the changes to the traditional Christmas open house in our village from the Friday night after Thanksgiving to Saturday night was made by Mayor Manny Capello without consultation with the village merchants, Saratoga Village Development Council, nor the Chamber of Commerce or City Council. If a change of this magnitude is undertaken, it should be done well in advance and with the discussion and cooperation of the shop owners, our Saratoga Village Development Council, the Chamber of Commerce, and our City Council. As Mother Christmas for the past 3 years, a 50-year resident, and a 20-plus year participant in our city, in our village Christmas open house, I view this change as a mistake and think the date should be converted back to the usual traditional evening of Friday, November the 25th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sue. And then I also have a slip here from Ben Connors. Ben, are you here? No? Well, any member of the public may address the council now on matters not on the agenda. Even if you haven't submitted a slip, I welcome you and encourage you to come up and say a few words. Please.
Mayor Capello, council members. I have a statement from Jill Hunter. And as she starts, as chairman of the Saratoga Village Development Council and longtime resident of the village neighborhood, I was shocked to hear that the village open house had been canceled Friday night, November 25th. This event has not only been a tradition of the city of Saratoga, but it has also been a lifeblood of the merchants who value this particular evening as one of the best sales nights they experience. Businesses such as the Book Go Round and the Echo Shop are just finding out that there will be no tree lighting that evening. that their popular open house events are now in doubt. This tradition of the open house has been celebrated in the city for as long as I can remember. Families plan on coming to the magical town decorated for the holidays to shop for the unique and wonderful gifts our merchants provide. The Fat Robin spends a week preparing for the lovely shop for the open house visitors. Many of these shops have been in the village for over 40 years and expect the night after Thanksgiving to be one of their best nights. The Barn Owl, Agnes, Skin Prophecy Boutique depend on this fabulous shopping night to increase their sales for the season. I do not believe that canceling the tradition with no public input was proper. Please give our merchants back their best night of the year. Jill Hunter.
Great. Thank you very much, Jack. Are there any others that would like to speak? Seeing none, I feel as though I need to make a couple of comments relative to this because it's making me sound like a real mean guy up here taking away Christmas and not allowing the Christmas tree lighting to take place. That is certainly not the case. One of the things that I thought was really important in this time with the national dialogue and rhetoric that's going around, that's all around hate, exclusion, putting people through things just because of the color of the skin or the faith that they believe in. That's the national narrative that's going around right now. What I thought was appropriate that we as a community, since we are so diverse, that we would make a very symbolic gesture to other communities, and especially within our community, that we're a group of residents that are much more inclusive in nature. We're about unity and togetherness, and not just accepting each other's differences, but to celebrate them together. And so I sat down with the Ministerial Association, which is clergy represented from each of our religious institutions in Saratoga, and put the question to them: how can we make our tree lighting ceremony more inclusive to the entire community, not just to those who celebrate Christmas? The suggestion that came to them, and to me at that time from them, was to engage in a celebration of light. Every religion has a divinity for the light, and it was universal and would be inclusionary for everybody. And so I said, okay, let's go ahead and add that to the program. Of course, Rabbi Reiner from Congregation Beth David said, the Jewish people celebrate their Sabbath starting on Friday night. And so if you're going to hold it on Friday night, I'm afraid we can't attend. And I said, well, when can you attend? They said, we can certainly attend Saturday night, which seemed to be a reasonable difference or change to take place at that time. One other thing associated with Saturday night is that it's also Small Business Saturday. And I thought it was appropriate, since we have all small businesses, mom and pop type of retail stores in our downtown village, it only seemed appropriate for them to take the benefit of what will be a larger group engaged in the tree lighting ceremony and the celebration of light, because it's going to be inclusionary in nature, so that they could take advantage of them and not be competing against the big box stores that are on a frenzy on Black Friday. So it seemed to be a reasonable change. It was well within the prerogative of the mayor to make this change. There have been changes made in the past by other mayors, and they weren't. But I recognize one mistake that I made, and that is I didn't give enough notice to the merchants and to the chamber in order for us to execute on this thing flawlessly. And as a result, we see this pushback going on right now. I take responsibility for that, and if I can do anything, in fact, we as a city are making extra efforts to ensure that the program is successful and that the merchants end up with more business than they've received before. And so we're going to continue to work with the chamber, because once again, they run the wine stroll and the village open house. The city is in charge of the tree lighting ceremony. We'll continue to work with them. We'll continue to work with all our nonprofit groups. We're going to try to make this a success. And if it doesn't work, it's up to the next mayor or to others to revert back to what they want to do as well. So anyway, I apologize for the issue and the tension that this has created in the community. That certainly was not my intent. I was trying to make this a more inviting and more inclusionary activity for all. But anyway, I apologize for the issues that have been raised. And again, I just felt it was necessary to at least respond in this manner. But I appreciate your comments and I appreciate your input on this. Are there any others that wish to speak on non-agendized items? Seeing none, we'll close that particular item on our agenda, and now we'll move into new business.
One quick
comment.
comment.
Yes, Howard?
Manny didn't say it. The process matters to all of us. It matters to Manny. He has already agreed to agendize at our next council norms meeting a discussion about how we schedule or how we change schedules for city events. So the process is being looked at too. But all I got to say, Saturday, mark your calendars now. It's Saturday. Yeah. And we'll deal with the process stuff next time we talk about council norms, which is normally when we change over the council.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, now let's move on to the item that we are trying to address and get to quickly.
Manny, I did want to thank Councilmember Howard Miller for bringing up the fact that the non-agendized item had not been covered, and which led to everyone speaking. Otherwise, they would be still sitting here all through the water discussion. So I wanted to thank Howard. And, that way, Sue Mallory, Jack Mallory, Jill Hunter, everybody got to speak today. So thank you for doing that, Howard.
Good. All right. Now we'll move on to item 4.1, the San Jose Water Company review procedures and city authority to regulate, again with a staff report starting with Richard Taylor. And for those of you that may not be aware, Rich is going to provide us with his report. There will be questions from the City Council to our attorney and our city manager, at which point, once those questions are complete, then we'll open up the public hearing and give everyone an opportunity to speak who wishes to speak on this particular item. If you haven't completed one of these or filled out one of these slips, you can get them at the front lobby table and submit them. It'll help us to keep the thing moving in a proper order. Thank you. Staff report, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Because this matter is more complicated than a lot of things that typically come before you, I've broken out of my pattern and have put together a PowerPoint to walk you through the points that were in the staff report that you have. So council's direction was for staff to prepare a report on how water rates are set for San Jose Water and what, if any, jurisdiction the city has regarding those rates. So in connection with that, staff has reviewed the law regarding private utility rate setting. We've looked at the state proceedings concerning the recent San Jose Water Rate Company to look at the process that was followed by the state in looking at those rates. And then we did legal research on the scope of the city's jurisdiction concerning those rates. And we also, based on that, thought about, well, what are the city's options to influence water rates going forward? So that's what I'm going to be going over now. By way of background, there's a lot of acronyms and alphabet soup things going on. So just so you know, obviously the key player is the San Jose Water Company. The San Jose Water Company is responsible for delivering water to many Saratoga residents and other residents in the area. They actually get their water supply from the Santa Clara Valley Water District. The district manages the water, makes it available. San Jose Water takes that water and delivers it to its customers. San Jose Water is a private water utility, and that's something that's a little different. Only 16% of Californians are served by private water utilities. Most people are served by public agencies. So many cities are in the business of providing water, or there are special districts that, again, are public agencies that are in the business of providing water. But San Jose Water is one of a number, 2 dozen in the state, private water utilities that deliver water. Santa Clara Valley Water District you're familiar with. They've been here many times. In addition to being a water supplier, they also take a very comprehensive look at protecting the region's watershed, working to ensure the integrity of our water supply. They also deal with flood control protection. The California Public Utilities Commission is who you're going to be hearing me talk a lot about. This is the entity that the state of California has said is responsible for regulating private utility rates. In addition to regulating the private water utilities, they regulate the electric utilities, they regulate the railroads. Anybody that the state has given a monopoly on, they regulate to look out for the public interest, also to advance other state goals. The public interest is really the main protector of the public interest in this process is this outfit called the Office of Ratepayer Advocates, or ORA. The Office of Ratepayer Advocates is within the Public Utilities Commission, but it's independent. So their job is to, while the regular PUC staff is looking at everything and saying, does this make sense, and asking questions, the Office of Ratepayer Advocates has an agenda, if you will, of saying, do we think this is fair to ratepayers? They aren't looking, their job isn't, the PUC has a job of thinking about fairness to ratepayers, fairness to the investors in the utilities. These utilities are private companies. They have investors. Those investors are entitled to a rate of return. The PUCs, there are state policies. Should we have more of something, less of something? So the PUC has to look at the whole picture. The Office of Ratepayer Advocates is looking out for ratepayer interests. Just an overview of the rate setting process. And this is, here in one slide, I've encompassed probably 10,000 pages of regulations and orders and decisions and process and procedures, and I don't pretend to have even read all of those. But this is the basic approach that is used, is the utility, in San Jose Water's case, every 3 years, the utility comes to the PUC and says, here's how much money we think we're going to need to conduct our operations each year in the next 3 years. And they have a discussion, and they say, and that amount of money is called the revenue requirement, and you'll hear me refer to that. But they say, this is what we need, and this is what's going to cover buying the stuff we need to deliver the water to people, buying the water, also all the infrastructure, all the staff to manage the infrastructure, any investments they need to make, and again, a reasonable rate of return on their capital for the company shareholders. Based on that revenue requirement, the company then sets rates, and the PUC has a whole separate set of rules about how the revenue requirement gets translated into rates. And that's what we see on our water bills, or that's what San Jose Water utility customers see on their water bills. Then there are surcharges, which are things that come up and address issues that weren't really considered in the revenue requirement process, but require adjustments. And we'll talk a lot tonight about the drought surcharges, but there's a separate surcharge to account for the fact that the PUC didn't make its decision on the rates until 6 months into 2016, so there's a surcharge to make up for what went before. And there are countless other surcharges because the PUC is incredibly specific about going down and bean counting to every separate little bean and keeping track of separate categories of things. So it gets very complicated very quickly. But the people in the PUC, they live and breathe this. For them, and I'm not saying an Excel spreadsheet is easy, but for them, it's like doing a basic Excel spreadsheet would be for most of us because they do it so much of the time. So this application comes in and it's reviewed. The proceedings are put up on the PUC website. The PUC staff reviews it. Members of the public have an opportunity to review it, and the Office of Ratepayer Advocates review it. And then there are a whole series of proceedings going back and forth. And this generally takes about a year. Sometimes it can take 18 months. All depends on the range of issues that come up. And finally, the PUC makes a decision. And then the PUC has a variety of ways in which those decisions can be appealed or questioned. It is difficult to sue the PUC. The Constitution and the state don't like the idea of the PUC being second-guessed, you can sue them, but it used to be that you could only sue them in the California Supreme Court, which had the right to say, we don't want to take this case. Now, in some cases, you can bring litigation before the Court of Appeals, but the legislature has made a very high bar to bring suits against the PUC itself. So, now getting to the specifics of what the residents have been facing. The factors affecting the bills, and the rate schedule for San Jose Water is 3 pages long, single-spaced, all different factors. But from what we've been able to gather, and we are not economists or rate analysts, but looking at it from a common sense point of view and looking at what the main issues were in the proceedings, the 3 factors that seem to be contributing to the big increase in rates are the water rate increase, which, and I'm going to talk about each of these in a minute, but the water rate increase, the drought surcharges, and then the Santa Clara Valley Water District increased its rates at the same time. So all 3 of these things happened at one time. So first, the water rate increase. In 2015, San Jose Water applied for a 12.2% increase in its revenue requirement. So again, they said, we've been looking at how things are going here in the district, and our overall costs, thank you, are going up. We think they're going up 12%. The Office of Ratepayer Advocates and others looked at that and said, we think that's too high. They negotiated with San Jose Water, and they changed it to an 8.6% increase. And in the staff report in the council packet, there's an attachment that shows the different categories in which they reduced those. As I mentioned, that process took about 1.5 years. By the time the PUC made its decision, it was June 2016, but thank you, the decisions was retroactive to January 1st. So the rate increase had another rate increase just to play catch up, and that will go away after a certain period of time. But again, all these things are designed by the PUC and their rate rules to make sure that San Jose Water gets the amount of money, and not more than the amount of money than the PUC has determined it is reasonable for San Jose Water to get per its revenue requirement. The thing that is, I think, important to note here is a way in which the customers of private utilities are treated differently than the customers of public utilities. And this last point on the slide, which is the conservation pricing strategy. And this is a broad policy concern, that the policy issue that the PUC has adopted. And the PUC's view is that rates and PUC policies should not be designed to encourage utilities to sell more of whatever it is they're selling. They don't want PG&E selling more electricity or gas. They don't want water companies selling more water. They think that conservation of electricity, gas, water is a good thing. So they've said that the pricing for utility services should put 70% of the costs should be recovered based on volume. And only 30% of the costs should be in the form of a fixed fee. And a fixed fee in this case is, everybody has a meter charge, and that's, you have to pay a certain amount every month just because you have a water meter. But that doesn't change depending on how much water you use. That fixed fee stays the same. But what's interesting is most of the costs for a utility are fixed costs. They have one set of pipes. They have one administrative office. They've got, there aren't that many of their costs. It's really the cost of the water is the main cost that is variable. But instead of saying we're dividing those fixed costs equally across all the customers, and we're just charging everybody, it costs us $1 a gallon of water, we're going to charge everybody $1 a gallon of water no matter how many gallons they use. That's not the way the PUC has said it should be done. The PUC has said 70% of the cost should be recovered by volume-based pricing. And that is a core PUC policy. Now, for public agencies, if the city of Saratoga was a water supplier, we would not be able to price that way. The city of San Juan Capistrano tried to price that way, and the Court of Appeals said, no, you can't do that. It violates the California Constitution. In Proposition 218, the people said that when the government does something, the government can't ever charge more than it costs to do it. So if it's costing the government $1 for a gallon of water, the government can't charge more than $1 for a gallon of water. The government can charge $1.25 if there's a 25% cost of the staff and things associated with it, but all those other costs, the fixed costs of the government, have to be allocated equally among all the users. So that's a core difference, that the 16% of Californians that are served by private water utilities aren't subject to the protections provided by Prop 218. So the 70-30 rule you may hear me refer to again. So that's the water rates are component one that everybody is having to grapple with. Then, at the same time, while San Jose Water was going ahead and the PUC was reviewing the revenue requirement application, our drought started getting really serious in California. And in 2015, the governor issued an executive order calling for water conservation. The State Water Board echoed that and ordered a 25% reduction in water use statewide. And they then allocated that among the regions. And our region, according to the state, was supposed to reduce its water use 20%. The Santa Clara Valley Water District looked at the situation here and our groundwater supplies and their concerns with subsidence and a number of factors, and they concluded that we needed a 30% reduction in the district's region. So, and the PUC, pursuant to the governor's order, ordered all the private water utilities. They said, tell us how you plan to achieve these goals. And San Jose Water came up with a plan and presented it to the PUC. And people are familiar, and it's outlined in the staff report. They look at what the 2013 usage was, and then they say, they say, this is what we think is reasonable for people. But if you go above it a certain amount, your charge is going to be a little higher, and if you go beyond a certain amount, your charge is going to be a lot higher, twice as much per gallon, or by the end of the day, 3 or 4 times as much per unit of water used. So the baseline that they used is based on the average usage of all residential customers. So they looked at all the San Jose Water residential customers. They said, what's their average usage? And that's the baseline. So if you're somebody who it has a household that's twice as large as the average user, doesn't matter. If you're somebody who has a lot that's twice as large as the average user, doesn't matter. If you're somebody that's half the size of the average user, doesn't matter. You can continue to use it. It's not based on the individual's past use. It's based on the district-wide past use. So that's what they did, and that met with a lot of opposition. And I'm going to skip over this slide. Is the allocations. I think you've seen those. This is from the staff report, and it's very hard to read. But if we can come back to it, we can come back to it if we need to. But the Office of Ratepayer Advocates said, wait a minute. This approach that San Jose Water has used isn't fair. It should be based on each individual customer's past usage. And they said, San Jose Water's applying the surcharge just to the residential customers, not to their non-residential customers. They said, that's not fair. The PUC looked at it and said, no, Office of Ratepayer Advocates, we disagree. We think that they acknowledge that there is no perfect way to set these surcharges. But they said, we think that charging people who use more and more based on the overall average is a fair way to do it and is reasonable. And they commended San Jose Water for coming up with a good strategy to achieve the conservation objectives. And by the same token, they said, we understand that they've limited this to the residential customers, but 60% of their customers are residential, and it makes some sense for them to just focus on that segment to get things done because they're the majority of the customers. I'm not saying these were good decisions. I'm telling you what the decisions were. But so that is where they stand. And the PUC said, oh, and if somebody feels like there's a particular hardship, they can go complain and come through a whole process that the PUC has for individual hardship exemptions. But again, I think they were, that process is there are rules for it, but straightforward is not a word that you would probably use. So that is the drought surcharge. Then the third variable in this perfect storm, or lack of storms, I guess is a better phrase, is the Santa Clara Valley Water District rate increase. And through its own process, the district went in, looked at its cost, and raised its rates 7% effective July 1, 2016. The PUC rules allow San Jose Water to pass those costs directly through to the customers. So that's, those are the factors that have led, I believe, to the biggest increases on people's bills. So what can the city do? The city doesn't have any regulatory over San Jose Water. We're not allowed to pass an ordinance that says, here's how you do your rates. To protect investors, the Constitution and the legislature have said that's just with the PUC because they don't want private water companies having to be regulated by a bunch of different entities. As we've discussed, Prop 218 doesn't apply to private utility rates. So there isn't an opportunity for us to go make a legal claim based on the Constitution and the taxpayer protections that people who have public water supplies pay attention to. But the city can appeal past PUC decisions. The PUC has they have procedures for everything, and they have procedures to go in and say, hey, you didn't do it right. And there are many options as to the specific form of that appeal. An appeal is actually not even a word that the PUC does, but we can have requests for modifications and requests for reconsideration, but they all boil down to, hey, PUC, we think this is something that you should do over. The PUC doesn't tend to look favorably on those. They need to make it clear to people that their decisions are their decisions. So for them to change their decisions is a relatively unusual circumstance. But that is an option. The city also can participate in future PUC proceedings. There are lots of little proceedings where San Jose Water will be filing different tariffs with the PUC as things are adjusted. There will be, even consistent with the revenue requirement that the PUC just approved, there's a PUC process that accounts for what will likely be a 3 to 5% rate increase next year and then again the year after. And then there's going to be a big new rate proceeding for rates that would, starting in 2018, for rates that would take effect in 2019. So the city could go participate in those. And then finally, the thing, this is a little more amorphous, but the city could seek to influence future rates by beginning a dialogue with the state, with the PUC and other state policymakers about the 70-30 cost allocation rule, which the PUC had its reasons for doing it, but there's a legitimate public policy question of whether it's fair that most people in California, Prop 218 says, you pay the costs and you don't pay more. And yet, for people getting their water from private utilities, they are subject to the 70-30 rule. And so there is a fairness issue that the city could try to promote dialogue on and see if it can get the PUC to revisit that 70-30 allocation. So that concludes my staff report. Happy to answer questions.
Okay. Howard?
Sure. Thank you, Richard. When I asked for a report with options, I had not realized it would be so complicated. And I got to say, it's been a few years since I first joined the council. I never remember a PowerPoint from the city attorney before. So that, I think, really is a first, Richard. I got a bunch of questions, and maybe they don't make any sense, but I kind of have to ask some of these questions. So Prop 218 and the 70-30 rule, since that's where you left off, that's where I'll start. This doesn't apply because of the way Prop 218 was written or because of a rule of the legislature?
Because of the way Prop 218 was written.
Okay. And so, I mean, the citizens could pass a 218 prime or whatever that said, no, this applies, but could the legislature actually do something to change that?
The legislature couldn't amend Prop 218 or the Constitution.
No, I didn't mean that way, but
Right, but I think that the legislature, and again, we haven't, this is something that if you want, we would pursue, but as a general matter, yes, I think that the legislature could say, PUC, when you're setting rates, we want you to use this approach. I will tell you, I think the legislature, they've been trying to regulate the PUC for the last few years. They've gotten some things through. I think it might be something that, if you want to pursue that, I think you might want to try to get the PUC to do it themselves through changing their rule. They have a rule that says the 70-30, and we could ask them to change that. But
yeah, I mean, the PUC is interesting, right? There's just 5 members on their board. Are those the people that are making the decisions?
Ultimately, those are the just like you make all the decisions for the city, they make all the decisions for the PUC. The decisions that they're making, no disrespect, are a lot more complicated than the decisions that you're making. And their staff is 20 times larger than your staff, and so they have to rely to a much greater degree on the information that their staff is giving them.
That City Flower was a pretty hard decision on our part. But no, I mean, really, seriously, so if I got it right, they're doing 504 actions, 307 hearings last year. That's like 800 items. Was ours a 10-minute item with them, or did they actually really put a lot of thought into ours, or did they just get a staff report and that's it?
I think I cannot answer that question with respect to this particular item. What I can say is that my sense is that the rate increase with the revenue requirement was a 1-minute item because there was a settlement agreement with the Office of Ratepayer Advocates. I don't think they paid attention once there was that settlement and nobody was complaining. I think that was it. The surcharge, because the Office of Ratepayer Advocates said we disagree, because they disagreed with the ratepayer advocates, I think that was a 10-minute item for the commission as a whole.
So probably more at the staff level between the ratepayer advocate and them. Does San Jose Water participate in that, or is it they just have San Jose Water's proposal and those?
No, there are. The final decision is made by, or the final staff recommendation is made by a staff member sitting quietly on their own, but there are countless. One of the things I've been talking with people in my office who work with the PUC is it's far more complicated than going to court, because there are countless meetings and there are 10 lawyers for different people in each meeting, and each one has filed different pieces of paper. So there's lots and lots of staff level discussion that involves the applicant and involves other interests.
I want to talk about some of the appeals just for a minute, right? So we could appeal the process and say this isn't fair. Was there like a time limit? Did we have to like appeal the month after, or is it any time we could send in a letter of complaint or?
It's interesting. We can send in a letter of complaint anytime. I think that as a practice, so that's the legal rule. As a practical matter, I think the more time that passes, the less likely they will be to listen.
So in terms of like, do they have to hear it, or do they just decide, are they like the Supreme Court, they decide which ones they're going to take or not take?
Basically the latter.
Okay. And then you said individuals can apply for hardship. Do they have to review those?
I don't believe that gets all the way up to the commissioners, but there are offices and branches.
So 1,000 residents could all file some sort of hardship appeal, and somebody at the PUC would actually have to consider them.
Consider them, yes.
Okay. There's a little English in that. Could the city apply for a hardship, for all residents?
The city could certainly apply as to its usage, but I think again, for a hardship exemption, no. The city could say, we have many residents that this rule is arbitrary, which is one of the standards. They can't make decisions that are arbitrary. So that would be a request for modification, not a request for a variance or a hardship.
So we as a city, for our residents, could make a request for modification?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, shifting gears just a little bit as I go through my creative mind. There has to be some set of rules. Well, it's the PUC. Are there possibly rules by which San Jose Water would be required to reassess the surcharges and stuff like that? Or is it, when they said you get these surcharges, it's like forever?
No, the surcharges have, I can't tell you the specific term, but the San Jose Water is not allowed to make more money than its revenue requirement. So if it operates its rates and the PUC determines that, oh, you've been, with these surcharges, you've been getting way more than we expected you to get, then in the next rate proceeding or in some subsequent proceeding, they would say, you need to find a way to get that money back into the customer's pockets.
I think it's pretty clear that maybe they're making a little extra money and it's someplace. How do we know if the extra money they're making is beyond their revenue requirement? I mean, I'm pretty financially astute. I read this thing 6 times. I went to the CPUC website. I can't figure out if they think they're making the right amount of money or if they're making too much.
And that is what we would need to retain rate analysts, experts in, we would need to retain the consultants that do these kinds of things for a living, that live and breathe it the way the PUC staff does. And there are people that do that. It's more of an accounting profession than a legal profession. There's an overlap. But those would be people, and they would know the forensics and the way to go look at things and see if there are things that seem out of line.
So in terms of things that would trigger San Jose Water to have to go back to the CPUC, if Santa Clara Valley Water District were to cut their conservation target, which they set this last year at 20%, and Santa Clara Valley Water District, achieved 28%, so the goal may be higher than it needs to be. If they cut their target rate to, say, 10%, does that force San Jose Water to have to go back to the CPUC and adjust their rates?
I don't think it forces them to go back to their rates, but that would be that's the kind of thing that I think would get more attention for an appeal to the PUC for a request for modification, saying to the PUC, there's been a change in circumstance, and you need to change this because of this changed circumstance. Now, the PUC they make these very sweeping pronouncements about the importance of water conservation. And so the PUC could say, well, we don't care that the Santa Clara Valley Water District has changed its goal to 20%. We still think that 30% is good, and bravo, San Jose Water. So that would be within the PUC's discretion, but I think you've got a much better chance of success with saying, listen, they've reduced it now to 15 or 10, and the surcharges should be adjusted accordingly. I think the PUC would listen to you. There's a greater likelihood that they would.
So what about an argument on equity? I mean, the water that's provided by Santa Clara Valley Water District, a lot of it comes from state water projects. Those same state water projects serve Sacramento, where water's 1/10 the cost. Is there an argument about that, saying, look, the cost of the water is the same, why do we have to pay 10 times more than other regions within the state of California for water that's delivered from the same projects?
I think that I think based on the tone and language I see in these PUC decisions, I don't think the PUC would find that persuasive. I think that they would say the water cost, we do allow pass-through of whatever the water cost is. And Santa Clara Valley Water District has set its price. And they would say the revenue requirement is a lot more than just the cost of the water. It's the cost of the whole San Jose Water operation.
Yeah, okay. I had some other ones, but maybe that's probably enough for right now.
Emily?
Yep. So I have one question, and then I'll leave the rest to other council members, or I'd like to hear from the public from here. So we talk about the water rate increase of 8.6%, which was being agreed upon by the ORA and San Jose Water Company in June, retroactive January of this year, retroactive January, the 8.6% increase. That is an increase over what year, over last year?
That is first off, I want to clarify, it's a 8.6% increase in the revenue requirement.
Right.
And that is over the revenue requirement that was in effect in 2015, which was something that was determined by the PUC 3 years earlier, and it had escalators. And San Jose Water came and said, they started saying we need 12% more. They negotiated with ORA, said we need 8.6% more. How that gets translated to the rates, that's the thing that we need this rate analyst to tell us, because it doesn't necessarily go through in a linear fashion. Overall, it should be that at the end of 2016, well, and even there, I don't know how long the surcharge for the catch-up, but in general, at the end of 2016, San Jose Water should have collected 8.6% more, and if it collected its precise revenue requirement than it did in 2015.
Yep. So since this is a revenue requirement, when a customer get their bill, it might not talk to this 8.6%.
That is correct. And right, that's it. That's something that we need the rate analyst to really go in, and because they've got the 3 pages of tariffs.
From your understanding, since they can retroactive the water rate increase back to January of this year, that's a one-time spike. Is that supposed to be a one-time spike?
For some period, I think it's a year. I think that over the course of a year, the surcharge to make up for the 6 months will make up for all the 6 months, and then it will go away. I don't think they put it all on just one bill.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Rishi?
Yes, thank you, Richard, for a pretty comprehensive job of running through. Took you a lot of time, I presume, and going through the due diligence. But, my very first question is basically, I think there is a little bit of history in terms of how our community got impacted. And what happened was the June and July bill showed up in early August, and it kind of erupted on Nextdoor. People were talking about it, and folks had pretty expensive water bills, and exorbitant water bill. In fact, I had a URL. I called it tinyurl.com/exorbitant water bill, and I was getting public input in terms of how exactly they were impacted. I think I got about 50 submissions on there, and I see many of the folks who submitted are here today. But when I saw that, I realized that this item, water, was not on the agenda for the August 17th meeting. And I realized that this was a hot topic for our city. And so what I did was what I could do. I had a meeting with our neighbors that I scheduled, and I invited the Santa Clara Valley Water District and also the San Jose Water Company to that meeting. Yes, the question is, yes, I'm leading up to the question. So basically at that meeting, we got the opportunity to talk about how the rate increases happened, and that deck that I churned out before the meeting still has a lot of hits. It has a lot of linkages in there, and there are 3 specific linkages that are included in the deck, and my question is related to that. So we had about quite a few people who showed up at that meeting, and many of them actually went through and submitted their request following those 3 links and what exactly they are. Now I hear that they have managed to get some sort of allocation increase, some sort of a rate adjustment, things like that have happened.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We are in questions, not history mode. Can we ask our distinguished council member to get to an exact question? We're going to have discussion later, and we can talk history. But I really think we should be in question mode right now. It's not fair to the process.
Yeah, thank you. Rishi, could you go straight to your question, please?
Absolutely will. So the question is, there were 3 links that were in the deck, and there was an appeal to the CPUC process. There was a link in there. there was an economic hardship appeal,
Point of order.
and there was a CPUC
Point of order.
allocation appeal.
I think question is who, what, why, where, when. I'm not hearing it. As Councilmember Lowe just said, I really think the best use of our time tonight is to hear the people that have come here for the item that we have agendized for this evening.
Again, Rishi, if you can get to your question, please.
So the question is basically, when we look at one of the components is appeal to CPUC, that people have been sending it through, but it's really not very effective. So is there an opportunity for us, the city, to actually be part of the appeal process? Have you done some research on that? And the question really is, have similar cities, you mentioned about a dozen private utilities, have they gone through similar hardships? And has your research pointed out some very specific, when there is a joint CPUC appeal as filed by the city on behalf of the citizens? I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
I am not aware. We thought about looking at what was going on with the other private water utilities and their rate structures. And the challenge is that everything is so complicated and there are so many variables that we could not find a way to easily compare apples to apples and make judgments like that. So we looked at it, but we did not pursue it. So I can't tell you that there haven't been cities. All I can tell you is that I'm not aware of any where the cities have done it. But the city may go to the PUC, not for the individual hardships. That really needs to be, each person needs to make their own case for the hardships and the variances. But it is legally permissible for the city to file a petition that says, PUC, we want you to change this rule for the following reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Now, the other question I had was, the first line says, city has no regulatory authority over San Jose Water Company rates. And, basically we saw it, there were surcharges happening, all the rate increases were happening. The question is, what could we, as the council member, could we have done anything back then when all these rate increases are happening with CPUC? Did we have any jurisdiction to help decrease or increase rates at that point, right? Or apply any influence to CPUC as we were going through the process?
Again, we have the same rights as anybody else. So anybody can go and testify. Anybody can seek to intervene. Anybody can complain, but there's nothing special about being a city. And again, typically it's the Office of Ratepayer Advocates that is in there looking out for customer interests.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions at this time? Okay, good. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. I have a number of slips here. I have them in the order in which they were received by me. However, if you find that there's a better sequence, by all means, let me know, and we can go ahead and adjust accordingly. Because I know that some individuals have worked together in order to be as efficient with their time as possible. So, with that being said, first on my list here is Bill Bowler.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I am persuaded that you folks do understand and have internalized our problem, and for that I'm very thankful. I learned a lot tonight. I was surprised to learn that puke is spelled P-U-C. I didn't realize that before. But beyond that, it strikes me that on our behalf, if you would continue to keep fighting, it strikes me that there are three things that you should consider doing. And I think that you should represent us back to the PUC. I am persuaded that that probably won't necessarily go anywhere. I think that a letter on our behalf from you to the advocacy group to reiterate the point that they were made was a good one. And I'd also like to see you take a stand with the San Jose Water Company, who advocated this position in the first place, because I think it is incredibly insensitive. And it seems to me that there's a good argument for segmenting their customer base. Maybe the Saratoga community should be normalized by the Saratoga community as opposed to others. Perhaps a segmentation that is considerate of the head count for a percent of the allocation and considerate of the land usage as a second component would be a good consideration. The argument simply being that our homes on average occupy, let's say, certainly 20% or less of the people head count per square footage as opposed to other places. And there's some, we benefit from that, but the rest of the community benefits from that as well. By maintaining our yards and the foliage and what have you, there is a significant reduction to the demand per square foot put on city services. A 1 acre home here with a single family would put 2 cars on the road instead of 10 cars where there are 5 single family homes, or 5 times that where there are apartments, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't mind paying more because we get the benefit of that, but our demands and requirements on the community other people benefit from. And so this logic of normalizing things by head count and not normalizing it by acreage or other things which have other benefits to the community is punitive and offensive and just lacks logic. And I think that that ought to be brought to San Jose Water Company's attention as well as the advocacy group. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. Next up is Mary Robertson, followed by Mary Jo Townsend.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff, and thank you for moving us up a bit. I wanted to talk to you tonight about the lack of bill transparency on our San Jose water bills. We're wondering how we're supposed to understand our bills, and just to get my money's worth out of my $500 and some odd bill, I decided to call the water company. Some of us have had 12 line items on their bills. Our July bill had 32 line items on it, none of which showed the calculations as to how they arrived at the dollar amount. The bill is so confusing and difficult to decipher that even their customer service department was unable to explain the math for all the different surcharges and items, and stumbled when explaining item WCMA 2015, indicating that the calculation should have been $3.20 less on my bill, yet there's been no adjustment. Basic service for a 1-inch line has increased 13.65% since June 14th. That's if I don't use a drop of water. Prior to June 14th, we were being charged $3.23 per CCF for the first tier. We're now being charged $4.06 per CCF for the first tier. This is a 25.7% increase, not 8.6%. The Tier 1 allotment billing quantities have also been reduced 77%. That's the first tier charge, from the 13 CCFs a month at the 2013 levels to the current allotment, which is 3 CCFs. And by the way, this is the lowest allotment for the first tier on the peninsula. We have information on that. In addition, Tier 2 and so on have increased cost percentages similar to Tier 1. In an email sent to resident Rita Benton from John Tang, San Jose Water Company VP of Government Relations and Corporate Communications, Mr. Tang explained it this way. To arrive at the true unit rate, you would need to add both the 2013, 2014, 2015 groundwater and purchase water surcharges of wholesale water rate increases levied by the Santa Clara Valley Water District on July 1 of every year. I'm out of breath just saying that. This adds up to approximately 64 cents per unit on top of the $3.23. The 64 cents and the 8.6% increases still do not equal the new Tier 1 rate charge of $4.06. This isn't explained anywhere, and it's completely non-transparent. We were never informed that 6 surcharges were going to be rolled into the tier rate increases from the surcharge line item section of the bill. We now have no way to track if and when the surcharges expire. Not only have the tier usage allotments gone down, but how is it that San Jose Water was able to take 6 temporary Santa Clara Valley Water District surcharges that were previously calculated as a percentage of our usage and roll it into a permanent tier rate increase? We need you to address and investigate all these concerns as well as the transparency lacking on our bills. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mary. Next up, Mary Jo Townsend, please. And then after Mary Jo is Lainey Richardson.
Mayor, council, and staff, there is no transparency with San Jose Water. We have no idea where all our money goes. And then we see that their stock is up 33% since February of this year. Financial analysts are excited about San Jose, or SJW Corp., the parent company, citing, among other things, should the CPUC persist in the positive vein of rate increases, it will further enhance the company's earnings potential. In order for San Jose Water to be a transparent company, the public should know where all of our money is being spent. San Jose Water only shows us what they want to show us, and with the current laws, they apparently don't have to show us where all the money is being spent. SJW Corp. was founded in 1985 and is a parent company to San Jose Water, SJW Land Company, SJWTX Inc., Texas Water Alliance Limited. We want to know if our money is being diverted into the other subsidiary companies of SJW Corp. Without transparency, it is a big question mark. When an investigation was done by NBC back in 2012, Richard Roth smugly said that he doesn't have to make his company's spending records public because they are a private company and they don't have to. It's the law. It's their legal right. There is no reason for them to make their company spending records public. In a written email to Rita Benson, in a written email to NBC, John Tang stated, "We are not obligated to provide the requested information and will not be doing so." In 2012, Assembly Member Roger Dickinson stated that San Jose Water operates in an environment where they have no competition, where they're given a public license to operate, and they are charging the taxpayers, the ratepayers, to cover the cost of operation. They ought to make their spending records available. We need the law to change. The culture at San Jose Water is to be non-transparent and to share as little information as possible. We want to know what they are hiding. How does the public know that our money is being spent properly if there isn't full disclosure? So we're asking the council to request full disclosure of the financials or actively search for an alternative to San Jose Water for our water supply needs.
Thank you. Lainey Richardson, please.
Yes, thank you for listening to us tonight. In calculating its customers' water allocations, San Jose Water took the average customer water usage instead of a customer-specific water allocation. The Organization of Ratepayer Advocates and the San Jose Water customers appealed this back in 2015, saying that it was discriminatory and unreasonable. The ORA even pointed to the requirements that the PUC must determine and establish rates that are just and reasonable and not discriminatory or preferential, and argued that San Jose Water did not meet this standard. In February of this year, the PUC rejected the appeals from the customers and the ORA and upheld the mandatory water reductions, allocations, and surcharges requested by San Jose Water. The PUC also upheld the use of average customer water use as opposed to individual customer water use as the basis for the allocations. So now we are all expected to use the same amount of water regardless of whether we are 4 people living on half-acre or 1 person living in a condo. This is not reasonable and it is not fair. The people with larger lots have contributed more to water conservation effort than the people living in condos, yet they are being penalized with drought surcharges and have dead or dying yards to show for it. Because the citizens have not been able to get San Jose Water to give its customers all the data, information, and calculations as to how they arrived at the average water allocation, we would like the council members to request that San Jose Water turn over this information to its customers. We have the right to know. San Jose Water is collecting millions of dollars from its customers in drought surcharges alone. Where is all this money going? It's supposed to be collected in a separate memorandum account, and the drought surcharges are not intended to provide increased revenue or profit to the San Jose Water. We don't know where this money is going, nor does it appear that San Jose Water cares to tell us. On June 22nd of this year, San Jose Water determined that reductions of 2% would be adequate to meet the state-designed stress test. Yet they imposed a 20% conservation target on its customers and kept the water allocations in place. All other water companies in the area lifted their drought allocations. Water allocations need to be on an individual customer basis. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Milt Furman, followed by Kathy Gardner.
Is Saratoga a tree city?
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, it is less so now than it was 3 years ago. Trees are a great asset to the environment, to beauty, and to property value. The City Council and the citizens of Saratoga all want to truly be a tree city. We have a vision to plant 2,000 more trees in the near future, but we must be able to prevent our current trees, especially the large, beautiful, older trees, from dying from a lack of water. The combination of drought and the exploited practices of San Jose Water Company, who has crafted outrageous water bills, are taking a serious toll on our trees and on our hillside stabilizing plants that protect us from mudslides. It is sad to say, but we are frequently hearing the citizens of Saratoga and our friends in other cities talking with pity about Saratoga's water problem. The unfair and unfettered penalty formula used by San Jose Water Company to generate these huge water changes is a disaster. There is strong reluctance by our citizens to spend any more on water than the huge amount that we are already being charged for. So we will continue to lose trees. Here are some examples of affected trees that are at least 38 years old on just the 3 short streets in my neighborhood. 9 redwoods in my yard are distressed. The city arborist, Kate Bear, and another professional arborist said, other than watering more, there's nothing that can be done about this. So now my distressed trees also have beetle infection. 3 aspens on different properties are dead. A large cluster of junipers are dead. A huge, long-branched fir tree that is probably 80 years old has lost much of its foliage and is leaning at least 10 degrees toward a garage. A professional arborist evaluating 2 large drought-stressed oaks said, the drought has weakened hundreds of riparian oaks around the county and made them more susceptible to secondary infection and disease. A certified arborist, ironically from the Santa Clara Valley Water District, summed up the overall situation of insufficient watering by saying, we have a serious backlog of dead and dying tree issues to account for. Duh. We are fortunate to live in an area of high home values, but we are concerned about the forthcoming impact of dying trees and hillside stabilizing plants on our home values. How will Saratoga be perceived and valued by potential home buyers compared to many other nice cities who are able to water more because they have a different water company with fair and reasonable prices? Thank you for your attention to this matter, and we clearly need your support, our City Council, to stop San Jose Water Company's exploitative practices for the benefit of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Milt. We have Kathy Gardner, followed by Kathy Cleary.
Thank you. Mayor, council, and staff. I want to talk a little bit about the reasonable rates and the rate percentage comparison with other cities in our area, or in California, rather. The CPUC mission statement states, excuse me, the CPUC is responsible for ensuring that California's investors owned water utilities deliver clean, safe, and reliable water to their customers at reasonable rates. I will say reasonable rates. That's their mission. The CPUC needs to take a long, hard look at the rates and surcharges that they have approved for San Jose Water. There is a very, very big problem within the CPUC if they think the rates that they've approved for San Jose Water are reasonable. Other water companies are charging our neighboring cities much, much less. We collected water bills from non-San Jose Water customers for the months of July and August of 2016 and compared them with our July and August bills of 2016 and found that San Jose water bills are 87% higher than San Jose Great Oaks Water, which is a for-profit company regulated by the PUC. San Jose bills are 141% higher than Citrus Heights, California American Water, which is also for-profit company regulated by the CPUC. San Jose water bills are 387% higher than Folsom. San Jose water bills are 396% higher than El Dorado Irrigation. El Dorado Irrigation charges so little for water that their website says the cost for a 12-ounce bottle of water at a local convenience store can run from about 99 cents to more than $1. For 99 cents, you can drink 565 gallons of healthy tap water from El Dorado Irrigation. That's on their website. There is a huge disparity with water rates across California. This is the same drought, but with much different treatment. Even our Central Valley cities that are in more extreme drought than us are paying much less for their water. As little as $1.40 per CCF with no additional route charges. There needs to be a policy change at the state level to eliminate the rate disparity, and you, as council members, can engage with our elected official and start the ball rolling, please. We need your help. We need swift and immediate action. Water is a basic need, a necessity to life, and San Jose Water is turning it into a luxury item. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. Kathy Cleary, followed by Sandy 14.
Thank you. And thank you. You did a wonderful job. Very thorough. I'm just going to read you some comments that the people who signed the petition wrote. One person wrote, "As we continue to reduce water consumption, the water bill has increased, not decreased. Water is now our #1 household expense, higher than insurance, taxes, etc. We are reaching a point where many will no longer be able to stay in their homes. Calls to the water company to explain why decreased consumption has led to increased cost have fallen on low-level personnel who are totally unsympathetic and offer no rational explanation." Another person said, "With less dense housing and more trees and foliage, we contribute more positively than our share to the environment. Linking our water consumption to an arbitrary average by person is unreasonable, unfair, punitive, and a detriment to society rather than a benefit." Another person said, "We are being crushed by unfair billing from a profit-seeking company in a monopoly position. Tens of thousands of residents who have existing pools and sizable acreage cannot possibly stay below the arbitrary allotment of water without destroying their pool equipment or letting everything on their property die. Meanwhile, we see businesses pouring water all over their landscape with no conservation or penalty. The water company is profiting grossly from these water penalty fees and fines and enriching itself and its owners." And lastly, one person said, "The entire burden imposed by the state's water conservation was put solely on the backs of individual households. Apartments, businesses, industrial sectors, and agriculture are all getting a free pass. This is especially insulting since individual households account for only 20% of the state's water usage. Therefore, the 20% reduction that the San Jose Water Company mandates amounts to a whopping 4% in savings. That's just for the San Jose Water Company service base. Approximately 80% of the state's water districts, including most of the Bay Area water districts, have dropped their water restrictions entirely, except the San Jose Water District, i.e. the San Jose Water. San Jose Water continues to require water rationing, even though the majority of Bay Area districts have stopped water rationing in light of the normal rainfall experienced this past winter. Adding further insult to injury, they're recording record revenues and profits due to approved rate hikes by the CPUC. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. After Sandy 14, we have Virginia Horger.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, and staff, thank you for your time this evening. We appreciate it. The customers of San Jose Water are frustrated and angry. San Jose Water believes that our frustration is directed at the drought surcharge program. There are many things wrong with the drought surcharge program, but that is just one of the reasons of our frustration and anger. If you look at your bill, you will see all the other charges. Mine happened to be over $1,000, and it's not okay. We've all known that there is something terribly wrong with our water bills, but not until Ginny deciphered and reverse engineered our bills did we really understand how wrong our bills really are. The way San Jose Water is charging us affects all its customers, not just the ones going over the water allocation. If we use the billing model that Ginny created, and she will talk about next, we can see that all of our bills have increased a crazy amount. San Jose Water is charging all of its customers using 15 CCFs per month, or a minimum of 69% more now compared to 2013. The extra line items alone have increased by 177% from 2013 to now. This increase goes up even more drastically with drought surcharge and line item fees if we go over our water allocation. Our bills have increased so drastically over the past few years that San Jose Water is making more money than it's ever made. Not only are we getting squeezed financially, but they don't seem to care. When we do call them, they tell us to conserve more water and make it seem like all the extra money we are paying is just because of drought surcharges, and we are not conserving enough. That is just not true. And I can tell you details if you're interested. Since 2013, San Jose Water has increased the base service charge by 35%. It's increased its quantity charge by 67%. And as I said before, San Jose Water has increased all the line items by 177%. And this is for what San Jose Water calls their typical customer. Back in 2012, San Jose Water requested a 44% increase. That increase was denied, but here we are 4 years later, and not only did they get their 44% increase, they got a whole lot more. We need you to address the CPUC and ask them to reevaluate all of the increases they approved for San Jose Water. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. After Ginny, we have Rita Benton.
Mayor, Council, and staff, you have heard lots of numbers tonight, such as water bills increasing by 69%. I would like to explain where those numbers come from. My July-August water bill was astronomically high, even though we had used 44% less water than the same two-month period in 2013. My bill was difficult to compare to the 2013 bill, however, because we had not used the same amount of water. I needed to compare apples to apples, a bill in July-August 2016 to a bill in July-August 2013 for the same amount of water. Only then would I know how much my water bill had increased. So I researched all charges on the 2016 and 2013 bills, looking back at previous bills to understand the rule behind each charge. I created an Excel spreadsheet that used those rules to calculate 2016 and 2013 water bills for all CCF values. Essentially, I had reverse engineered the San Jose Water billing system. Now I could compare a 2016 water bill at a given CCF value to what a bill would have been in 2013 for the same amount of water. The results were eye-opening. My bill had increased by 155%, or 2.5 times. San Jose Water wants customers to believe that their increases are due to the drought surcharge. Not so. Yes, the drought surcharge adds to the bill, but if the drought surcharge were excluded, my bill would still have increased by 77%, nearly double. San Jose Water defines their typical customer as one who uses 15 CCF per month or 30 CCF in a 2-month period. My model can compare their bills too. A typical customer has no drought surcharge. The usage is within the allocation allowed. Yet a typical customer, a 30 CCF user, has seen their bills increase by 71%. In summary, percentage-wise, water bills have increased significantly at all CCF usage points. Saratogans may see astronomical bills due to large lots, pools, and landscaping that are typical of our community, but all San Jose Water customers are impacted by extraordinary price hikes. Water bills are not due solely to drought surcharges. We don't have a choice of water supplier. San Jose Water is a monopoly. In the last 3 years, San Jose Water has been able to double and triple our water bills, even though we have conserved water. We need fair and reasonable water rates. I respectfully request that the Saratoga City Council become actively engaged in this issue, supporting efforts to better understand the nature of the problem and coordinating corrective actions with other cities serviced by San Jose Water. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. After Rita, we have Richard Mattern.
Mayor, council, and staff, you've heard several of us speak about the lack of transparency with the San Jose Water bills, the overall culture of San Jose Water, and how little they care about their customers and how important their profits are. If they really cared about their customers, they would be trying to work with us on a solution instead of giving us their canned response of, we're charging these rates because the CPUC said we can. You've heard us speak about unfair and unobtainable water allocations, about the negative impact this is having on so many aspects of our lives, about the unreasonable rates and what other companies are charging their customers. You've seen our data explaining these unreasonable rate increases. And although the city attorney indicates that the PUC is the exclusive arbiter of rates charged to residents by San Jose Water and that there is no action available to the city that would allow it to require a reduction of San Jose Water rates, there is still action that you, the City Council members, can take. I would also like to remind our council members that we elected you to serve and help our community, and we desperately need your help now. We are asking that the City of Saratoga take the lead and collaborate with our neighboring cities to work jointly with moving forward with all the actions put forth by the City Attorney, including but not limited to the following. We would like you to jointly file a petition for a modification of the PUC rate decision and/or the current Section 14.1. You should retain expert rate analysis to carefully review San Jose Water filings with the PUC to identify matters that may have been overlooked by the ORA, the CPUC staff, and other interested parties in the earlier proceedings. We would like you to jointly file a complaint with the PUC contesting the reasonableness of rates and surcharges. We would like you to jointly seek to influence future rates. We would like the council members of all cities to write a joint letter to the CPUC with signatures from our governing officials backing your requests or our requests. We need our government officials involved. Many of us have written letters to our elected officials and the CPUC, but we need the support and backing from the council members and signed by the governing officials. This will carry much more weight than the letters we write. We would like the council members to engage with our governing officials and draft new legislation that would A, require more oversight of the CPUC to ensure proper regulations, B, require investor-owned utilities to be transparent with all their financials and company spending, and C, create policy change at a state level to reduce the disparity of water rates throughout California. We would like all of the information and progress that the city makes in this matter to be made public and posted on the city website. The City Council understands that time is of the essence, and if the aforementioned requests do not produce favorable change, we would like the council members of all cities to engage their respective attorneys and look into filing a joint lawsuit against San Jose Water and the CPUC. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rita. Richard Mattern, followed by Larry Robin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. The fundamental problem, in my judgment, is that unlike our neighboring towns, which do not use this particular water company, they all followed the lead of the governor and the legislature in asking each of us to reduce compared to the preceding 3 years. Now, the very clever administrators, who, by the way, have increased their salaries dramatically during this period, talk about fixed costs. What those clever gentlemen and ladies did was to not use any comparison to 2013. After all, that would be very difficult. They only have large computers available to do so. Rather, they took a broad average of everyone in San Jose and concluded that the amount of water you needed was for about a 4,000 square foot piece of property, or in the cases of condos, rather less. So for apartments. Now, what does that mean? That means that when compared to 2013, in our case, with a somewhat larger property, we had to reduce our water consumption by 95%. Not 30%, 95%, because we don't happen to have 4,000 square feet of property. We have somewhat larger. We have larger, and we take care of it because we are proud of being a Saratoga resident and having an attractive home. Now, what has happened when you write letters to the to the PUC or to the San Jose Water Company? They are absolutely ignored. No response. They are above mere citizens concerned with their arbitrary rulings and their arbitrary agreement with San Jose Water that you go your own way. Don't compare to 2013, in which case I think we'd all be fine, but compare to an arbitrary standard that you made up yourself so that when compared, we all pay. And the larger the property, the more water consumption, the greater the pay. It is simply unfair and untenable. And I believe we, as a community, should get together with, for example, Los Altos, who did compare to 2013 and whose water bills are substantially in percentage terms below ours because they followed the state suggestion, which, as I've mentioned, our local company did not. So meet with them, understand what their water companies are doing, and other water companies around the state, and you will find that, I believe, although I've not made that broad calculation, that we have been arbitrarily singled out and believe that we can simply pay it because we can pay it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Larry Robin next. Larry? No? Okay, well, I'll put that in the back slip in case he's just stepped out momentarily, and we'll catch him at the end. Dee Dee Smollett, followed by Lynn Weber.
Thank you, Mayor Capello and members of the council, and thanks for moving us up a little bit. It did save some time. I've met with many different neighborhood groups, and I just want to kind of vouch for this neighborhood group led by Rita Benson. They have been one of the most prepared and reasonable and organized groups. I've met lots of organized groups, but this one, they've met with you with facts, and they've really done their homework. So I really think that you need to take what they're saying to heart, because I do. Saratoga, it's mentioned, is a tree city. What I want to remind you is the cost of doing nothing in this case. It's important to our identity, our natural environment, and it's a largely modified landscape because we are a historic city, and much of our landscape has been planted by our forefathers and mothers. But that does require water, and the drought plus these rates have really had an impact on our landscape, and I think you can see that driving down any of our streets. So we can discuss moving towards a more drought-tolerant, fire-resistant landscaping, but that's going to take some time. And that would create quite a different environment than the one we see now. And people are conserving either by necessity or by choice, as in our case, but the rates are really having an impact, and it's increasing our fuel load. So those risks that we're facing are increased risk to fire, and that's been evident in all over the state of California, and it's creeping further north. I went to the tree mortality workshop this weekend. They stated that in 6 Southern California counties, 66 million trees have been lost since the start of the drought. And that to me, that's just an astounding figure. And I'm sure if we started counting here, we would be shocked and alarmed by the increase of that fuel load that we're experiencing here. So I'm not telling you what to do, but you need to consider what the impacts of doing nothing are. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dee Dee. After Lynn Weber, we have Raymond Ozzie.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'll try to keep it brief because I think a lot of what I have to say has been covered. But as I understand it, the role of the CPUC is to regulate public utilities representing the best interest of the state's residents, which is all of us. And this is a necessary function due to the typically non-competitive, you can read that, monopolistic nature of public utilities. Clearly, the grossly non-uniform application of drought remediation measures across the state and even regionally in our local area is an indication that the CPUC is not fairly representing all of their constituents. I've personally found the CPUC to be totally unresponsive to citizen input. In June of 2015, I sent letters to each of the commissioners and their respective chiefs of staff, and I've received zero response or acknowledgement. Absolutely no response to citizen input. This leaves the representation of our community's citizens squarely in the hands of our elected representatives. I'm asking you, as Saratoga's elected representatives, to please press the CPUC and let them know that we want to be treated with some respect and uniformity. The CPUC has allowed the San Jose Water Company to implement a plan of drought remediation that is totally focused on the preservation and, in fact, increase of their profitability. And all of this is in the context of substantially reduced product sales. Anyone with any kind of business awareness knows that that doesn't compute. And that 8.6%, I think, would be fair to address as an annual profit ability increase or revenue increase. And so I think we can look at it that way. I think the city attorney's report was instructive. I think he made it very clear that the crux of the responsibility lies for our situation, lies with the CPUC and perhaps Proposition 218. And again, please put some weight that we can't as individuals apply on this problem. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Lynn. Got Raymond Ozzie, followed by Robert McDonald.
Thank you for a very instructive meeting. Coming at the end, most of the points that I wanted to make have already been made, so I won't belabor them. But I have also seen, like many of our fellow Sararegans, seen my water bill double while I cut my water usage in half. I find, like all others, that the rates are arbitrary and unfair, but I have learned that that really doesn't matter, so I have to accept that. I would like to have one question. As a private company, the contracts for construction and repairs done by the San Jose Water Company are not subject to the same scrutiny that a public agency such as the city is. And if I can just draw a page from history, when the Transcontinental Railroad was built, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific Railroads didn't make much profit in themselves. They had a very broad shareholder base. However, most of the profit was made by the construction companies that built the railroad. And these companies were held by the robber barons and J.P. Morgan. And I wonder if some of that might also be going on, and if there is a conflict which should be investigated, certainly within the letting of contracts. There's certainly a very large contract being worked on right above La Ricanada Country Club, and I understand that's many millions of dollars, and I wonder how that contract was let. So I would urge the company, the council, to investigate some of these practices by the San Jose Water Company and see if that is where some of the profits have been hidden. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Raymond. We have Robert McDonald, followed by, once again, Larry Robin. And then that is the last slip, 2 slips that I have. If others have slips, they can pass them forward anywhere on the dais here. We'd appreciate it very much. Please.
Thank you. And I want to thank the council and the staff members and for this great discussion. It's a real good example of a city government that's working. The legal homework, et cetera, things I never knew and helped a lot. Everybody's done a great job also of discussing the rate issues and so on. And I would just like to be sure everybody doesn't forget the environmental issues and the things we as residents are expected to do. In my own case, I have heritage redwoods, which literally I would have to get a permit if I wanted to tear them down, and yet I'm told not to water them to sufficient levels, so now they have a lot of brown on them right now. I'm also responsible for 4 large magnolia trees, which unfortunately are real water hogs, but I didn't know that at the time I put them in, but they were put in at the request of the city when I built my house. Not the specific tree, but I had to have dew blocking trees. I also had to take some other trees out, and I was told to replace every tree with 2. City of Monte Sereno, I should have mentioned I'm from Monte Sereno. I have these, what I regard as good citizenship requirements laid upon me, and I'm trying to make sure I take good care of that. I've had several dealings with the water company when they first announced the allocation method, and I discussed this with them in detail, and I got some surprising answers. Why didn't they just do 30% cuts for everybody based on historical averages? The answer was at the time, and I know other people have gotten different answers depending on when they talk to the same individual. And the other answer we got more recently was it's too complicated software and all to calculate all the differences for landscape and all of these things that we have that make each property different. I accept there's no off-the-shelf software. I'm also aware of discussions that are going on in Southern California where they're talking about flyovers and looking at the density of foliage, which can be measured scientifically. The drought level of trees and so on can somewhat be measured. There's some things they could be doing to allocate water differently for each lot, depending on size and the demands of the vegetation. That can really be done, despite what they say. And I do think that what's been said here, what an easy way out to get a whole lot more money with less work just by making all the people with big lots pay heavy charges basically per cubic foot of water that they get, and also for the surcharges that we have to pay if we want to maintain the 1-acre properties, for example, that I have. I guess on that note, I would just say let's not forget the environmental factors, and let's not forget that allocation methodology is highly suspect, and I think that can be taken on even though the rate issues are harder. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Again, the last slip I have is for Larry Robin. I think he may have left. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this matter? Even if you haven't submitted a slip, something's come to mind, if you haven't spoken already on this topic, please come forward at this time. I want to make sure we have the input from each and every one of you, if that's at all possible. Good. All right, come on down. If you can start with your name, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Roshan Gurupati. So we actually have a mailing list in our neighborhood. There are about 100 homes. So people, basically we did an empirical polling, and they're 1 acre properties. So basically, people have reported of water bills ranging from $1,500 to $4,000. So that's what is going on. And some people are complaining it's more than their mortgage payment. So this is a serious matter. And I empirically compared with, we're not talking about somewhere near Sacramento or somewhere else to Los Altos Hills, right? And then unfortunately couldn't compare because I couldn't, my bill is in, it runs into thousands. I couldn't find equivalent comparison, but I found comparison at 50 CCF. So in Los Altos Hills for the last this summer, so their bill was $281. The same thing in Saratoga is $562. So and then if the consumption is higher, the multiplier is again it becomes triple at some point. So we're talking about Los Altos Hills. So if we don't do something about it, there will be there has to be a significant neglect of our yards and everything, and our neighborhoods. It'll be a disaster. So this is a really, really serious matter. And I had somebody break into my house this summer, and I'm more worked up about this issue. So I think this is a really serious matter. And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yes.
Did they steal water while they were there?
Anyone else? We have one more.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council Member, for taking this issue on a very community-based driven idea, because otherwise, if we would be doing this personally on individual basis, this wouldn't have gone anywhere. So thank you so much for taking this initiative. What I wanted to say is pretty much everything has been covered, the data and the statistics. But what I want to say is that we brought a property, 1 acre lot, in February of this year, 2016. We moved in around June, and that's when the first bill hit us. And that was $1,200. We compared to the previous owners, and it was supposed to be $200 something that they paid. So it came as a shock. We reduced our water usage, shutting down most of the sprinklers, just keeping few of the selective ones that I really wanted to save. And the next bill came out to be $1,800. Now I'm so devastated by this. We are basically, to begin with, a very water conservationist family. Not even when we moved here. We back in Santa Clara City when we were taking advantage from the best water utility company. Now I regret moving into Saratoga, which is supposedly a beautiful city, and that was the reason for this move. And now I'm regretting it that if this would have shown few months before, then I would have not made that decision of buying a property here. Now what I worry about is that if this continues, then the property prices would be impacted, and what will happen to all of us if we are planning to sell our properties? The property market would be, in my words, crashing down, especially for Saratoga. And of course, this would have a tremendous effect on our environment for sure. That is something that would be really devastating for all of us. So wanted to request that if there is something that we can do, something that can be initiated from the council members to have everybody on board, whether it is a lawsuit. I have no idea what would be an expedited way of dealing with this, but we need your help, and I really hopeful to get that help from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Please come on down.
My name is Ganesan. Hello, Mayor and the council members. I'm normally nervous to talk in front of a lot of people, but I just came a little late. I apologize for that. But I saw something on the slide where it said from the presentation from the chief attorney that the business are exempted from the water usage. So I may be wrong, but we are all conserving water to save our city with the trees. An idea coming to my mind is if the city set up a private, or the community sets a private unit which could consume water to water our trees, in a more, conserved manner, not wasting it, we could still save our trees and still pay lower bills. And this is something to see if this something could be pursued, because based on the law, by the time we fight through it or process it could take long, but as a private business which would friendly to help the trees in the city, they would probably not pay such a heavy bill and save the residents from the headache. So it's just a suggestion. I don't know if it's feasible, a stupid idea. I just wanted to share since it came to mind. Otherwise, I apologize for anything else.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Creason. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else? Going once, twice? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and we'll open it back up to the council. However, I suspect that there are many questions that may have risen as a result of the comments that were provided to us. So we'll start with Howard and then Rishi next.
Sure. I know I had a lot of questions the first time, but more have come to mind with everything that's gone on. So Richard, the state has recently allowed CCAs for purchase of electricity, whereby we band together as cities or counties and we purchase electricity directly, and PG&E just becomes the transmission system. Is there such a thing for water in the state?
Not that I'm aware of.
So that would be a major legislative action.
And I think I am very aware that the electricity market is far more efficient and less encumbered by historical baggage than the water market. Moving water transfer agreements are incredibly complicated.
Okay, I got that one, but we could buy the water from the San Jose Water District, the same place, and not have a draconian rate structure. But anyway, that's another thing. I just have to ask, I'm hearing the bills are too complicated to understand and they're not transparent. Is there cause for like a class action suit for billing fraud? Are there not like fair labeling requirements and fair disclosure requirements on utility bills like there are on every other product we have to buy?
The most of the, again, that we're speaking in general terms here, but most of those laws exempt regulated things, because the idea is that the regulation is supposed to protect it. And one of the filings that the PUC gets a sample bill as part of these applications. So, I don't know that the PUC makes a specific finding that, we find this bill is okay. But I suspect that we're in an area where, when the bills were low, it wasn't an issue that the PUC ever had to think about. That may be changing.
Okay, then in terms of like if we wanted to file suit against the CPUC for being arbitrary and punitive, a lot of places before you can even have standing, you have to like go through the appeal process and stuff. Would we have to go through a formal request for like rate modification based on those same grounds and have that denied before we could go to court?
Yes.
Okay, I was afraid you were going to say that. Okay, here's a more speculative one. And my counsel's used to me being crazy, so bear with me just for a minute. Would it be possible for us to change our business licensing laws to allow any resident in the city to register a business at no cost for the purpose of changing their billing with San Jose Water to be on the business rates by which they wouldn't have a surcharge? I know I'm crazy, but it's just a thought.
Something tells me...
And I apologize because I normally talk to the attorney in advance about weird ideas, so this is off the cuff.
I don't know what so the city certainly has the power to issue business licenses to whoever it wants to issue business licenses to. I don't know if a business license is the sole factor that San Jose Water uses in determining which rate structure is applied.
Okay. Okay, I got a lot of comments, but those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Rishi, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. And, I think there was a lot of people who spoke, and the angst has always been there. Back in August, the narrative has really not changed. We have a lot more data. We have 3,000 plus signatures now in a petition, and it's a lot of information out there. But how do we act? How do we move forward, right? And it is absolutely imperative that we as a city engage right now, because so the question really is, what I'm getting to is there are a few options in here, and one of the options that actually I would like to bring up with our city attorney is basically, we talk about there are two options. One is when we look at what we have already paid. So the question is, can we file as a city? Can we file an appeal? And can we collaborate with other cities to file that appeal? So that's my first part in terms of how we can address the exorbitant bill of this year. And then going forward, the second part of my question is this. Basically, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? So if we decide, you mentioned, Richard, that we could potentially hire a rate analyst, and we could watch and intervene and influence CPUC. So the question is, what would be the expense for a city? And there are different options with the rate analyst. One is somebody who is just keeping an eye, or the other one is where we basically are a party to the proceedings, where we are able to influence and apply insights to CPUC. So two parts again. One is in terms of, is there an option for our city to file an appeal and potentially collaborate with some of the other cities that have been affected? So that's one. And how would we go about doing that? What is the process? And love to get your insights on that. And then the second part.
So the answer is yes. The city could file an appeal jointly with whatever combination of people it would like to, as long as, and the core issue there is, do they have common interests in moving forward? They would need to think about specifically what it was that was, there are a number of variables that we've talked about. The more things, but yes, there can be a joint appeal. There are a number of factors that could be appealed. The cost of an appeal could be relatively small, but only if the PUC rejects it on the appeal. So there's preparing the initial appeal, which is, these are very rough ballpark things, but probably $25,000 or something. If the PUC accepts the appeal, then you begin the process of all the things, and the costs can very quickly escalate.
So it could be, the first part of the question, what you're saying is $25,000 would probably be the minimum, and then depending on if the appeal gets accepted, it would probably go a little exponential based on that.
Yes.
And the second part in terms of the rate analyst.
Hiring a rate analyst and intervening, again, if we are intervening, we're in the very expensive realm. If what we want to do is monitor what's going on and provide information, it's really a question of how much detail we want to do, and we set a budget and we say to somebody, we want you to spend 10 hours a month bird dogging what they're doing and give us a report once a month. And we see what we get for that. And in some months it'll be low, some months it'll be high. That would be informational. and we would be able to see what was going on, but we wouldn't be getting in, having somebody roll up their sleeves and really immerse themselves in all these numbers.
But that would be, but if we did something beyond where we were party to the proceedings, where we basically tell CPUC that any time our rate structure is going to be affected, then we want to be a party sitting on the table, right? So what would that option, would that be more expensive?
That option is very expensive. That option is more expensive than that's an option going forward. And what we would do is, we would watch and see when is the next San Jose Water rate filing that has an opportunity for us to promote the values that we want to promote. And we would then intervene in that proceeding and participate and have a seat at the table. But we would have rate analysts and lawyers sitting at that table with other lawyers and preparing documents. So that would be a very costly undertaking.
And the option that Howard Biller was asking the question about potentially a lawsuit against CPUC, and what I heard you say earlier, that it's really not encouraged, right? I mean, is that
well, we certainly would need to. They are. There is a great amount of deference to the PUC, especially in, if there was if we got in and there was a very specific thing and they did something that there is no possible way to conclude otherwise, but the PUC is probably not going to do that. But we would have to assess that, as I said in response to Howard's question. We would have to go through the process as a formal participant to have standing to bring a claim, and through that process, we'd have to see what happened there to see if there's any basis to bring a claim.
Right. Now, I did have a question on the bills, because we have been told that the bill is very complex. Now, isn't the bill completely regulated by CPUC? The bill that we are seeing today is ultimately approved by the CPUC?
The costs that show up on the bill are approved, and the PUC has seen what a bill looks like. I cannot tell you right now if the PUC has said the bill must look this way, or if the PUC simply said that bill looks fine to us.
Sure. So what are the options for us to simplify the bill, sort of make it more transparent? And it's sort of like, based on what I heard a lot of the folks say, it's very hard for us to figure out, how exactly, what is the rate structure, how's it changed from 2013 to today? It's very complex. And how can we, what do we as a city, what options do we have to simplify that?
Well, again, as a city, we have no direct power, but we can, and the elements of the bill, the 3 pages of charges that are on the tariff approved by the PUC, those are there. So so one option is to say to the PUC, well, I'll start with the easiest option would probably be to think about, from a design perspective and an information perspective, what are ways of providing the information about the current bills in a more clear fashion, using the design thinking that we have, and there are people who are experts in that kind of thing, and seeing if there are ideas of, without changing the rules about how much gets charged for what, is there a better way to visually present that information? Something better than, you noticed my PowerPoint was very simple, but how do we get that across? The other much more elaborate thing would be to say, PUC and San Jose Water, reduce that rate schedule to 1 page and find ways to incorporate all those things that are separate into existing charges, and even if it, but who knows how that would work.
Right. Now, when we look at the rate structure, we heard some data that was presented to us, and I truly don't know if that data is correct, but that was the data we have. 141% more than Cal American Water. Then we have 387% more than Folsom, 396% greater than El Dorado Irrigation. And so, there are lots of these data out there. Now, if we could validate that, yes, it's unfair, do we have some grounds to go back to San Jose Water Company and ask for an explanation and justification as to why we are paying such rates, right? I mean, it should be, can the city, jointly request for some sort of a statement from San Jose Water Company why we have to go through this, right? Why are our citizens being charged so much more?
Well, that's certainly a question that we can ask.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Marilyn?
I have a couple. I'm trying to group them, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Keying off what Rishi has just said in trying to make things better, is there a better way of going to our state legislators and creating a partnership, as you have said up there, by promoting dialogue regarding the allocation rule and putting pressure on the PUC for future proceedings? Is that a feasible?
That is a feasible way. And again, my sense of legislative work is that the legislature wants to know what you've done to try to get the problem solved first. But I think it can't hurt to, I think it's a process. And that's the other thing with my experience of legislation is nothing ever happens in 6 months or a year. We're talking, especially with a new idea that is just coming to the fore. Oftentimes it's a 2-4 year process. And so there's nothing wrong talking to the legislature, beginning, you've got to begin educating people. And it's, so I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to legislators and talking to the PUC and talking to San Jose Water all at the same time.
Okay. My next question comes up directly from two speakers. Ms. Townsend talked about ways of finding out if money's being funneled into other subsidiaries under San Jose Water Corp. Is that something that we can do?
That's something
without a lot of forensic.
No, well, that's a very highly forensic undertaking, and so that's something that we would hire a rate analyst and look at the information we have. And again, we're getting way beyond my expertise. But my hope would be that those people, there are places that you can look and metrics that you can use to see if there are things that seem out of whack.
And the second one, and then I have a follow-up question, has to do with the Ms. Richardson's memorandum account and where's the money going for the surcharges?
And again, that should be something that the PUC should be able to track and is going to want to know that the idea of this money, these surcharges, is not to make extra money. The point is that the utility is selling less water. When they set the rates, they say, okay, you have a revenue requirement that's supposed to generate you X million dollars in a year, and we assume in doing that you're going to sell X thousand gallons of water. And so, but of course, and I'm grossly oversimplifying as the complexity of the bills illustrates. But so when they do these surcharges, the idea is they collect it and then they say, okay, well, we didn't generate this much of our revenue requirement because we couldn't sell that water. We sold 20% less water than we had, than the rate structure assumed we would. So we're making it up from the surcharge. Now, if the surcharge that's collected and is being held in the memorandum account is considerably higher, then the PUC's job is to find a way to get that back to the customers through rate adjustments. And those are all things that we could participate in.
So my question then goes to, that's not just a question that our city could put out there and the CPUC would just naturally and openly respond to it, right? Or
probably not.
Okay. So then my next question is suing, petitioning, whatever. Where does the forensic accounting fall in the expense comparisons for the city?
Once you engage in formally with the PUC, with any kind of an appeal, any formal proceeding with the PUC, we would need the forensic, the rate analysts would play a role in that. So that's a baseline. You wouldn't need, the only option that doesn't involve the rate analyst is a letter to the PUC, a letter to the legislature saying, you've got an issue here, we need to be looking at this 70-30 rule and the way things are allocated. If we keep things at a policy level, we don't need that. If we want to understand our thing, is there a better way to do these rates and what are the best arguments to make that, we need the rate analyst.
Do we need the rate analyst for the design info perspective for better way of presenting the bill? How can we get that done?
Maybe not. That depends on and again, we're getting beyond because I would recommend for the bill design that you start with San Jose Water and say, let's go find a good, we're here in Silicon Valley with the best design minds in the world. Let's make the San Jose Water bill a cutting-edge, understandable bill.
So nice.
And
okay, and the final question. Is there any ground for appealing the rates based on the environmental factors? We have a large section of our city that is in the CAL FIRE designated fire district, and to cut back on the water is to threaten our safety.
Again, that is a policy factor that you could bring forward in the petition to the PUC. I think that, again, the rhetoric of the PUC in these decisions is very pro-water conservation. So we would want to work to really, I think it would not be sufficient to simply say, this is a problem. We would need to demonstrate exactly how the lack of water is contributing to that problem, get arborists, get biologists, have real data so that the PUC sees there's a substantive concern here. So, but it's certainly a policy factor, as I was saying. The PUC has to think of the overall welfare of the state. In addition to ratepayer interest, in addition to shareholder interest, they have to do what is in the public interest. And so that is a factor that we could argue. They're going to want to know, again, they want water conservation. They want to promote water conservation. So how are we going to achieve that goal of environmental protection and achieve the state's goal of water conservation? But working with the experts, we could work to come up with those arguments.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it for now.
Emily?
I'm trying to organize my thoughts in light of all the comments. Number one, I think water conservation is still a big priority in terms of policy. I do agree that we need to take steps to advocate for the needs of our citizens and also to voice their concerns. In addition to working with some of the neighboring cities, especially with cities that carries the same...
We're still in questions right now. Do you have a question in that?
Sorry, I kind of jumped a little bit.
We'll get to discussion here shortly, but I just wanted to stop you in case you have a question that you want to ask the attorney.
Okay, so one very simple question. For a consumer then, for an individual consumer, if they have questions, if they think that they are incorrectly billed, what are the ways that they can do other than just calling San Jose Water Company, get a reply, and if they're not happy with the reply, what's the next step? That can carry some teeth.
Once you have to start with San Jose Water. Once you are not satisfied with San Jose Water, then there is a process to go to the PUC